Hi Dollar Divas, welcome to Behind the Vanity. I'm Jessica. So I had this video idea, I don't really know if it's been done or not, but I thought it would be fun kind of either way. So basically I'm gonna kind of take 5 palettes that I have in my collection and reimagine them and create mini palette versions of them. So I have 5 palettes, like I said, that are all in my collection that I thought there could be really great mini versions of these palettes. I feel like this last couple months, especially around the holidays, it's kind of the time of the mini palette. A few brands have come out with some, including Anastasia Beverly Hills with the soft glam, and of course Too Faced that created a mini version of the original Gingerbread Spice palette. So anyways, I love the idea of a mini palette, and I just think this is super fun. So before we get into today's video, I did want to ask you to subscribe if you are new and you are not subscribed to my channel, and especially if you watch my videos frequently or not subscribed. You have no idea how much subscribing really helps me and my channel out so much, especially as I get closer to 1,000 subscribers. And of course, if you're returning, thank you so much for returning. You know I appreciate you so very much. So if you want to see 5 versions of mini palettes that I kind of created and dreamed up, definitely keep on watching. So like I said earlier, Too Faced came out with a mini version of the original Gingerbread Spice palette, and I think this is so cute. So I decided for the first palette that I would show you a version that I created with the extra spicy palette. Of course, here is the palette, and there are so many colors that just kind of stand out. And so for this palette, I decided the mini would be 8 pans. I think that's kind of what their mini palettes kind of are usually, so I tried to stay true to the brand. So I'll pop up a picture of the full-size palette on this side, and of course my mini version that I made, and you'll have to excuse my illustrations. I did them with a picture collage app, and I am not like a big tech graphic designer or anything like that, so you'll have to just kind of bear with the pictures. Some are better than others, but I did want to try it to give you an idea of what the palette would look like. I really did feel like I had to have that shade Midnight Snack in there because oddly enough, when I was thinking about getting this palette, that is the shade, even though it's like the darkest shade in the palette, it's the one that stood out to me personally the most, so that had to be in there for me. And I did try to kind of balance out the shimmers and the mattes. Another couple really vibrant colors that really stood out are these 2 right here. So I thought it was very important that they're in there as well. And then of course, usually pretty much in all these versions, I've included like the lightest and darkest colors in the palette. So I did put this shade in there. And I put this shade in there as well because I feel you kind of need those lighter shades and like transition shades and all that good stuff. Then I wanted some warm shimmers in there. So of course I added this shimmer right here. The one right next to it, Spicy Mammy. And then it was kind of a toss-up between Candy Queen and Half Baked, but I decided to go with Candy Queen because I kind of felt it was just a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more shimmery. So yes, if I created a mini version of the Gingerbread Extra Spicy, that is what I imagine it would look like. So the second palette I reimagined as a mini is the Urban Decay Naked Honey. Now, Urban Decay does have some mini palettes out right now. I'm not exactly sure of the name off the top of my head, but they're little 6-pan palettes. I think they have 3 or 4 of them. Then they also have a collection where it's like 90s and 80s, kind of like decades, and they're really cute. I don't know if those are 6-pan or 8-pan. Then of course you have your Naked Basics, which are kind of mini palettes. And then I also have a mini version of the Stoned Vibes palette. Has none of the original colors in it, but it's just a separate little mini palette on its own. So for this one, I decided to go with 6 pans. So again, I'll have pictures of both versions up on the screen so you can compare them with each other. This was the hardest picture to kind of create because I couldn't find a good collage, so this one's a little rough, so bear with it. But of course, I went with the lightest and the darkest shades in the palette. This one here is kind of like a satin. It's not really like a matte, but it's not really like a shimmer. And then of course, this dark matte here, Sting and Flyby. Then the color that stands out personally to me the most, I don't know if this is the same for everybody, but this shade Honey here is, for me, like what just sells me on the palette. It's like my favorite. It's just like, I love it so much. So of course that had to be in there. Then I felt we needed kind of like a medium matte shade. So this one was a little tough. I kind of went back and forth on this one, but I decided to go with Keeper. And then I felt like I needed 2 more shimmers. So I decided to go with Amber and HBIC because I felt like they were the most kind of different. This one's kind of like a copper, and then this one's kind of like a muted brownish, kind of warm brown. I had this in there, but I I don't know, I just thought there was better choices, and this one here just doesn't really compare to this one. So that's what I ultimately decided to go with, although I'm sure I could be very happy with 2 or 3 or 4 different versions of this palette, because I do love this palette so much. And I really did try to pick like my favorite palettes, as well as palettes that I thought would make great mini versions, because not every palette is easy to condense down. So yeah, so I think that is what a good mini version of the Naked Honey would look like. The next palette that I decided to make a mini version of, actually the next 2 are Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes, and of course, like I said, they have a mini version of the Soft Glam, which is amazing. It hits all the right notes, they picked all the right colors, it just really looks very, it looks like the bigger version of the palette. It has everything you need in it. It's just awesome. And so I decided to make these 8-pan palettes as well to kind of stay true to the brand. So the first one here is the Carly Bible palette. And I went back and forth on a few of these shades, but I did ultimately decide on 8. So let me pop the pictures up on either side. So I, of course, decided to go with these 2 colors here on the very end. So you get a matte and shimmer that's really light. And then of course I went with the darkest matte brown. That way you can do a smoky eye. You always have to be able to do a smoky eye. And then these 2 colors I think really, really stand out. So of course they had to be in there, so that completes the mattes. So then I needed 3 more shimmers. So this is where it kind of went back and forth, but I feel like this shade right here, Aura, really stands out and it's just gorgeous. This shade here is also really pretty, and it adds like a different, I think it just adds that little pop of different in the mini version of the palette. And then I went back and forth between these 2 kind of goldish shades, but ultimately I settled on this one right here, but I really could have gone with either one of them and have been happy. So that is what I settled on for the mini version of the ABH Carly Bible palette. So then next I decided to make the Anastasia Beverly Hills Riviera palette a mini. This one was a little harder too, because these colors are just, they're all so vibrant and pretty and very different from each other. So it was, again, this is another one I could have gone a bunch of different ways on this. But of course, as always, even though I don't personally like this white shade very much, I did include these 2 shades. Then for the mattes, I decided to go with this shade right here, Cabana. Of course, this hot pink shade had to be in there. And then the purple. And then the shimmers was where it was the hardest, because they're all so pretty and so different. But I ultimately decided to go with these 3 right here. The turquoise, that pink, I'm terrible at reading the names, Palermo, and Inheritance. I just thought those were the 3 most vibrant. And I think the palette looks really nice. I think it looks like the Riviera palette, just smaller. So those were my picks to make this a mini. And then last but not least, I thought the Makeup Revolution Birds of Paradise palette would make a really great mini. You know, you kind of have some greens and oranges and purples and pinks that kind of repeat a little bit, so this was a really great mini. I don't like the shade Cockatoo. It really doesn't have much of a payoff, so this is the only palette where I really didn't include that kind of neutral shade. So I went with 5 mattes, 1 of the glitters, and 2 of the Super Shock. I don't know if these are Super Shock. They're kind of like a jelly consistency. So I decided to go with this shade right here, Macaw, as well as, of course, Canary. You need that bright yellow in there. And then for the purples, I kind of went with Adventure. I just thought it was the most purpley of them all. And Island is just a little lackluster. So I thought Adventure kind of, it encompassed pink and purple. So I think that was just a really good way to go. I included both of these shades here because, of course, the gold, you know how I love gold. But this Hot Tropic shade is interesting. It kind of creates, when you put it over the shades, kind of creates like an iridescent shade. So it's really very, very, very gorgeous. And then as much as I wanted to go with both glitters, I decided to opt and put green in there. I thought that was very necessary. And so it left 1 spot to put 1 of the glitters, and I decided on Rio. I just thought the blue sparkle ultimately would be pretty, but I could have gone either way with that. But so yeah, I think this is, like I said, there could have been a dozen different combinations, but I felt like this was the best version for sure. So that is what the Birds of Paradise palette by Makeup Revolution would look like if I made it a mini. So I hope you enjoyed this kind of different video. I thought this was really fun, and I would love to do this more with other palettes as I get more in the future. I think I at least have another 5 palettes that I could do this video with already in my collection, so I may do this video again with 5 other palettes, and I would love to do it again in the future as I, ultimately will collect more eyeshadow palettes. So anyways, if you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up by hitting that like button. Again, if you're not subscribed, please do that for me. It's quick, easy, free, and it helps helps me out so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.